Good evening, boils and ghouls, and welcome to Fear Day Friday, Episode 1. How is everyone in chat today? Or should I say this evening? Yes, it's all about the creepiness and the fears that you can bring in on Fridays. So, what is Fear Day Friday exactly? Well, it's a mixture of a lot of things. Voice acting, reading, finding urban legends, maybe even playing some horror games. Oh, distracted by your project. That's nice. Again, thank you for having this in the background going, and thank you for advertising around. As I was saying, Fear Day Friday is all about things that send shivers up and down your spines. Things that you might not think exist, but maybe do. In all seriousness, thank you all for being here. I will get back into character as I'm reading some of these urban legends and horror things. This is something new I want to do, but I'm going to give a little update to everybody. I'm eventually going to have a VTuber model because I've always been a guy who enjoys being a character more so than showing myself on the screen. As such, I guess that goes into my voice acting and my choice of career path I want to try to go down. With that being said, it's in the works. There's nothing concrete, and unless there's a day that I actually want to stream and be live, my webcam is probably not going to be as active anymore. It's going to be one of those things that I'll take on a sort of project basis. Like if there's a live stream that I need to do for charity, yeah, then I'll put the webcam online and be the flesh tuber for that sort of thing. But for the foreseeable future, any of my streams is going to be as a VTuber because I just feel more comfortable that way. I feel like I can actually be myself that way. And before we get started, I think I might be nice enough to show a little bit of sort of a concept sketch of what I've got going right now. So if you guys will bear with me, this is sort of a spur of the moment thing that I want to bring up. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying. I want to give a shout out to a VTuber named Cabal. He is known for doing a lot of the stuff like what I'm doing. He inspired me to do this sort of thing. He was live earlier today. He's not live now, but he drew his inspiration from Tales from the Crypt Keeper. So it kind of goes back to just horror short stories and short horror videos and films. Like, I don't know how many people remember Tales from the Crypt when it was on TV, but that's kind of the feel I'm going for this, just in a narrative basis. I want to share a story, and it's been in the back of my mind for a very, very long time. When H.G. Wells first wrote War of the Worlds, radio dramas were a big thing. Back then, there was no TV. Most of the entertainment that people got was from their transistor radios. And there would be certain nights where there would be stories that would come on. And for a short time, they did H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds. But when people tuned in, some people missed it. They missed it being said that this was a story at the beginning, and they actually thought that aliens were actually taking over the world, that there was an invasion going on. You could trace horror through narrative and vocalization all the way back to H.G. Wells days, all the way back to Alfred Hitchcock days. And with that in mind, there's a lot that can still be done in the audio sense of things. So, yeah, that's a lot. Love to do something like that, though. Seems like it's really happening at the same time. Yeah, I mean, that would be fun to interact. Like, have a story within a story sort of thing. Maybe one day you and I can get together and do something like that. I'm sure we can find plenty of effects to make that seem real. So, if you're not here for horror, I highly suggest you leave out now, because some of the stories that I have found, along with the voice acting I'm going to put into it, it might cause nightmares and things of that nature. But if you're brave enough to stay around and listen and enjoy the stories and urban legends that I have to tell on this feartacular evening, then it will all be wonderful. Just 1 second. I'm having to do this a roundabout way. We might do some creepy pastas. Ooh, creepy pock. You know, I had that thought earlier. It was more along the lines of creep pock. I'll come up with a name at some point. So for a minute, I'm going to bring up a concept image that I've been working on. Ruby, you've already seen this one, but others who aren't in there haven't. It'll only be for like a split second. I've improved, eh? Well, I really, really appreciate the compliment. Oh, I can do so many more evil laughters and voices than that. This one just so happens to be the easiest. Where did I put it? Bear with me a minute, I don't remember where I put this thing. Oh, okay. That's unfortunate. That's not right. Wait, hold on. Where did I... Hold on. I know how to find it. Okay. Uno momento, por favor. Ah, crap. It didn't save like I needed it to. Hold on. Technical difficulties. It wouldn't be a K-pop stream without a little scuff now, would it? You know what? We're gonna do it a different way then. There we go. So, as you guys can see, a bit of a concept here. I'm going for a Tex Avery style VTuber because I've noticed that really nobody else has anything like this. As you can see, there's kind of a mischievous grin there, and then an evil grin. That sort of thing. Those would be perfect to have up right now. As a matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? Since I can kind of crop things, even though the avatar itself isn't quite ready, I could set it like this. So hello there. That's much better. Much, much better. So at least there's a little bit of a VTuber there. You might say it's a PNG tuber at the moment. So, shall we get on to the reason why everyone is here to begin with? How about we start with an urban legend? But before we do that, I want you to get comfortable. Grab your favorite blanket or snuggie and just snuggle up nice and tight. Maybe get you a little dinner or a little bit of a snack. Maybe something to sip on. For those of you who can, turn your lights down low and your volume up. Really immerse yourself into the horrifying atmosphere that I have provided you, and listen to these fear-tastic tales. Perfect segue into the first urban legend I have to tell you. But what is an urban legend? Quite simply put, it's stories to make you as a person possibly take caution or improve your life things that you might not think is possible. Things that are so far out of the realm of possibility that you don't think anything of it. But there's still a bit of grain of truth to it. Imagine, if you will, you're settling into your favorite chair or bed or on your favorite couch. You're bundled up all nice and comfy. Low light, whether it be from a fireplace or a very dim light bulb. You've picked out your favorite book for the evening, deciding you don't want to have much in the way of watching television, but you have it on as background noise anyway, because you can't stand the idea of pure silence bringing that ear-piercing, high-pitched ring into your ears. Your favorite companion, be it a cat or a dog, hops up to you on the couch, snuggles up beside you, giving you the comfort of knowing that you're never truly alone in your house. You've already locked your doors, your windows are all barred. There's absolutely nothing that could take you out of your serene feelings. You get ready to wind down, and as you're reading your book, you start to get into it deeper, enjoying the story, enjoying the plot, the characters developing before you. You turn the page and eagerly read more to find out what happens next. And then all of a sudden, something catches your ear. There's an alert from the television saying that there is an escaped convict out. He should be considered armed and dangerous. He is wanted on 3 or 4 counts of murder. And he's been located near your town. As you process the information that has been given to you, you set your book down. You keep your blanket wrapped around you, and you go double check to make sure all your doors are locked, all your windows are locked, curtains are drawn and blinds are down. You're as safe as you possibly can be without an electronic security system, because let's face it, those things are expensive. You settle in once again, but you just can't get the idea out of your head that there's some lunatic running around. You try to read, but you just can't get immersed in the book anymore. You try for a couple of hours, sipping on your drink, eating your snack, enjoying the comfort of knowing that you have a companion beside you that's been faithful this entire time with you. You've had this faithful companion for much of your adult life, always there for you when you need him the most. Am I right? Not content just sitting there with your book any longer, you decide maybe it's time, with how late it is, to go lay down. Maybe, just maybe, you can get some sleep. Maybe by the morning, the authorities would have caught this lunatic, and everything will be right. As you settle into your bed, your blankets wrapped cozily around you, your head on that oh so cool and comforting pillow, your animal companion decides that he's going to lay beside your bed. That's not uncommon. Some people give their pets the choice to lay in the bed or outside the bed, under the bed, whatever their fancy. You think nothing of it. After all, what harm could he do just laying there? As you close your eyes and you start to doze off, sleep decides to come for you. But it isn't the deep sleep that you had thought. You're tossing and turning with your anxiety-ridden mind. You wake up a couple of times, looking around, just checking, making sure that all is okay. And it is. You reach down to pet your faithful companion, and it licks your hand. You stroke its fur a little bit, and you know it's fine. You roll back over and you go to sleep yet again in a fitful sleep, tossing and turning still. When next time you wake up, you get this feeling that something isn't quite right. You hear your animal companion stand up and go look throughout the house. You tense, waiting for your faithful companion to come back. And it does. And once again it lays beside the bed. Once again you reach down, petting it, feeling a little more at ease, but you still have the feeling that something is off. You eventually doze off one more time, and then you wake up again. Only this time, it isn't because you felt that something was wrong. Well, not in that sense. As a matter of fact, you feel the call of nature. So as you get up, you decide to walk into your bathroom. And that's when you see it. Your faithful companion in the tub. The tub littered with tufts of fur and blood thrown about. You turn towards the mirror and you see written in blood, humans can lick too. That was an urban legend known as the licked hand. So what was it that licked your hand the second time? Was it your companion? Or was it the murderous lunatic out and about? I will leave that to you to decide, my faithful listener. Ooh, I just love those kind of reactions like that, Ruby. Bloody helix indeed. For our next urban legend, let me set this bit of an example for you. You've recently asked out someone that you dearly love. You finally got the guts up to ask them on a date. The date goes good. You go on a second one and a third one. And you've asked your paramour out for a fourth one. On this night, you've decided that the two of you would drive to the highest place overlooking the city. A place where a lot of people would enjoy just being alone and with each other, underneath the stars and the moon. A very romantic atmosphere within one's car, yes? The music from your radio is soft and romantic. You've picked out a station that is known for some R&B and for some of those lovely loving night tunes. The kind of tunes that over time would get you all hot and bothered and worked up and ready for a night under the sheets. And as things are warming up in your car, everything is going right. You hear another news bulletin. A deranged man has escaped from an asylum with a hook for a hand. He should be considered unstable. People caution that you should not interact with this man and to call the proper asylum authorities upon sight. Thinking nothing of it, knowing that you had to drive up a trail, through woods, twisting and turning, there's no way this being could find you, right? I mean, the asylum is deep down in the city, isn't it? Nothing for you to worry about. The music begins again, and things get even hotter and heavier. And you yourself are loving every moment of it. Suddenly, there comes a tapping on your trunk. Looking back, you see that 'twas nothing more than a bird that had just landed and flapped for a few moments. The two of you laugh at your little jumping moment, your little moment of paranoia. 'Tis a bird and nothing more. You hear a little scrape along the ground, and you see a possum scattering about. It's being chased by a raccoon. Normal nature things, am I right? I mean, after all, the two of you have been out here for a couple of hours. The initial fear that Mother Nature and her animals have is past. They've just sort of come out and started doing their thing. You can hear the crickets chirping, frogs croaking. Still a very romantic moment. And as you continue to make out with your paramour, and you're getting to the good stuff, something odd catches your ear. All the sounds of nature have started to fade, and it gets eerily quiet. Aside from a little bit of wind rustling through the leaves, no sounds of nature can be heard. No rustling of animals past, no chittering of the crickets. The frogs have all grown silent. Very odd, especially considering that it wasn't too long ago that it was just a lively nighttime forest. And then you hear it. A snap of a twig, the rustling of leaves on the ground. You look in your rearview mirror and you see a silhouette of a man. And he's nearing your car. There's something wrong with his right hand. It's concealed. He's walking with a bit of a gait to keep that right hand of his hidden. You frantically make sure that your doors are locked, and you fumble for your keys. And as you look into those rear view mirrors once more, he's getting closer, and the hand is raised. It is a Hook. The man that you had just heard not too long ago escaped has found you. You hear a scrape along the side of your car, and it stops right at your handle. You finally manage to get the car cranked, and you speed out in reverse. You travel along this forest, and you make it through the winding trails back into the city. You're safe for the moment. You've outran this man. You start driving your paramour home for the evening. And as you get out to guide her to her door, you both freeze and look in horror as the Hook is hanging on your door handle. You were very, very close to death there, weren't you, Romeo or Juliet, whoever you are? So from now on, before you plan a night like that, make sure everything is well and safe, kiddies. We're going to take a small intermission before I continue with more tales of horror. Let these two urban legends just sink into your nerves, nice and deep. Be back soon. Hello again, my dear creeps. And welcome back. I apologize for such a brief intermission. As you know, narrating and talking a lot does tend to dry out the vocal cords. It's a good thing I've got some bloody tea here. Oh, such a sweet, sweet taste. How about another urban legend? One that has its roots, shall we say, in native folklore. Ooh, it looks like you're very, very interested in that one. So, here's a good one for you, urban legends wise. You're walking through the woods, deciding to go to camp. Your friends will be there soon, all 3 or 4 of them. But you decided to get to the campsite early and start setting up your tent. Maybe build a fire and start up some nice food. After all, what better food is there than that cooked on a campfire? I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. All the hot dogs and the s'mores, all the things that you could cook over an open fire, or even putting a grill grate over the fire. Think of all the steaks and stuff you could do. Hamburgers. Getting hungry yet? Of course you are. I know I am. But that's part of camping, isn't it? All the good food that you can cook. And the fact that you have your good friends coming as well. Just a nice time to get away from all the daily rigmaroles of life, such as your jobs and your responsibilities. I got choked. Choked on all that smoke coming from the campfire. Now, where were we? Ah, yes. Oh, you might say that. You might say that. So, as I was saying, you're setting up your campfire, your tent. Everything is nice. There's a good spring breeze blowing in the air. A slight scent of a creek nearby. Fresh water. Wonderful. The perfect camping ground in sight. As you're cooking things, your friends start to arrive. It is such a nice and lovely moment. You can share hugs and start to talk with them about everything going on. Just letting all the responsibilities in life fade away. Soon, the rest of your friends arrive, and everybody is gathered around the campfire, just enjoying themselves, loving everything that's going on at the moment. One of them decides that they needed to answer the call of nature, shall we say, and goes to find a secluded part, decently enough away from the camp. After all, nobody wants to see that, am I right? Well, maybe some people do, but I'm not judging. After a few minutes, they return. They're white as a ghost. Sweat dripping from them. They start stammering about something being out in the woods, something with red eyes. After a few moments, person tells you that they were doing their business and they got a feeling that they were being watched. And they turned to see the red eyes. Then again, maybe it was just, an animal who had albinoism. After all, they have pink or red eyes. It's not uncommon from time to time to come across something like that. I mean, it kind of is. Albinoism in animals is rare, especially when it comes to their survival rates. Still, the person that you're trying to comfort accepts that as an answer. Except, there's one thing bothering that person. There was a smell with this thing. It smelled odd. Something like a mix of death and sewage. And maybe just a hint of wet dog, or something wet of that extent. You managed to convince them that perhaps it was another part of the stream that wasn't as, clean nearby. And you settle down to pop open a few beers or drinks of your choice, whether it be soda or water, it doesn't matter. Everything starts to calm down. The moon is rising. The stars are coming out, glinting along the way. And everybody is just having a good time. It gets late, and all of a sudden people are starting to get tired. So a lot of people decide it's time to go into their tent and retire for the evening. It's not long before you yourself get the feeling that there's something odd around, something not quite right. You take a look out your tent window by lowering the little flap, and you get a hint of a pungent odor on the air. The same kind of scent that your friend from earlier was describing. You step out and you decide to investigate. You go into the woods, trying to find the source of the smell. Maybe it's some rotting carrion. Who knows? It is the nature, after all. Anything could be out here, right? As you walk through this trail, you see nothing. But you get the feeling that something is very interested in you. Something stalking these woods. You feel a shiver down your spine, similar to the feeling that you get when you know that someone is watching you. You turn, and there's the glowing red eyes. Surely eyes from an albino creature don't glow at night like this. Then your mind goes blank. Everything goes dark. You feel like you're floating. You can see your body below. It's moving of its own accord. You're doing everything in your power to will your body away from the source, but it just keeps getting closer. As you float as nothing more than a specter, your body gets closer to the thing that your friend from earlier saw. A being with dark, scraggly black hair, standing between 7 and 9 feet tall, glowing red eyes, a tuft of gray atop its head, walking as a bipedal creature You had heard many, many times of things like Bigfoot, but you never, ever thought that it was real. And yet here you are looking at one. Albeit not from your body's eyes, but from your mind's eyes, from your spirit's eyes. You're floating high above your body. You are now entrapped in the powers of the Sul-Kalu, the Raven Mocker has you. He guides your body to a place isolated from the rest of your camp and tells you, your body that is, to sit under an icy cold waterfall and just stay there. Your body, even though you know exactly how cold this water is, it's nowhere near swimming or comfort level. It's going to be ice cold, and there is a breeze picking up on the wind. Out of the north, where it's much colder, the temperature is dropping for nighttime. And yet your body is there, sitting under that water, getting soaked from head to toe. The Sul-Kalu turns its back on you and heads back towards your campsite. Your mind's eye and your spirit is hovering around your body, but you just cannot get in. The mind of the human body is trapped by the Sul-Kalu's power, even still, despite the distance that he has from you now. It wasn't long before another of your friends in the same state as you arrive, and he instructs them to sit on a stone not far from you, and then another, and another, until all of you are sitting in the lair of the Sul-Kalu. The most ancient and evil of all the Bigfoot species. You're trapped. Nowhere to go. Those red eyes constantly on you. By some sheer miracle, there comes a storm just several moments later, distracting the beast and making him run. You and your friends recover, and you dash out of the woods, into your car and back whence you came, leaving all the tents and food and whatever belongings you had there. Many nights go by, but you still have the nightmares. You can see the red eyes. You can feel the breath of this beast. You can smell the pungent odor. For you may have physically escaped the Sul-Kalu, but forever, for the rest of your life, you will never, ever be rid of that Bigfoot. That is an urban legend steeped in a bit of truth from the native lore. There is the Sul-Kalu, and it does have mind reading and hypnotic powers. And I admit, I got that one confused with one called the Raven Mocker, who is a shape-shifting Bigfoot at first, but I digress. That the Sukalu is actually the Cherokee Devil. You haven't heard that one before? Well, perhaps you should do a little more research. Oh. How is that for 3 urban legends to go on this Fear Day Friday? And you thought creepypastas were bad? These are things that could actually happen and be out there, waiting for you. Oh, before I entertain you with more stories, how about we just take a little time and reflect on the one I just told you? Perhaps we talk a little about the 3. Which urban legend put the most tingles and fear running up and down your spine? I'm very curious to know. Ooh, the first one. The licked hand. Oh, I could see exactly why that one would get you. That one would get anybody. That's one of them that got me, if you could believe it. That's why I chose that one to be first. It was the one that sent shivers up my spine the most. But at the same time, the Sukalu, I wouldn't want to run into that being in the forest, would you, dear listeners? I didn't think so. If you thought the Sukalu was bad, wait till I tell you about the Raven Mocker. Perhaps another time. Don't want more than one Bigfoot story going about? Ooh. I just thought of another urban legend. One that natives don't really ever want to talk about or be known. One that if you ask them about, they immediately try to deflect. But again, probably a story, an urban legend for another time. Unless you're just that curious. Oh no, we don't want to summon anything. Or do we? How is everybody holding up this evening after those tales? Ooh, what is the question? Oh, I think I could accept a request. Do you have one in mind? As long as it's a short story. Of course, by all means. Unless you can think of it and send it in a DM. That way there's no spoilers given. Ooh, I look forward to it. Very well. How should I hold someone up? Knife? A gun? Ooh, chains. I like that. They're so visceral at times. Especially when you can find the right one. Just has that right feel and texture of your hands. And then you wrap it around your enemy's neck, strangling the life from them. It's a rush that is almost never duplicated. You're forever chasing that dragon, and before you know it, you've taken more lives than you can count on your hands. Oh, I might. But you'll never know. Who knows? I might have been the one who took out that pet of yours. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. After all, in this COVID sort of place, I would be in a lot of danger licking your hand. Oh no, it does not at all. Probably one of the worst things that I've ever had the displeasure of tasting. Don't ask. I suppose while you're trying to think of your story, I can go on and read one of them that I found. This little tale is one called Decomposition Sits With You. It was submitted in a contest by one known as Fabi M. Hugo once told me that fall was his favorite time of the year. Told me to hold the leaves as delicately as you would a pretty girl's hand. His teeth would then spread wide across his face, pallid and flaked with brown, rows of sweet tooth that hadn't been cleared of duff. On his days off, we'd go hunting for mushrooms in the forest behind our house. It's hard to tell which mushrooms are edible, Hugo would say. Always said giddy over the possibility of the inedible, and as he led me through the forest. My studies turned to what you can eat. It didn't matter if it were safe or not. That day, Hugo pulled me along. His meaty fingers pressed white-hot divots into my skin. I followed as quickly as I could, but Hugo was excited. Alcohol and smoke wafting off him in ribbons. My shoes filled with filth. Mycology was his most recent hobby, an acquisition from an old friend, he said. Hugo's hobbies often skipped from one gruesome hobby to another, from taxidermy to collecting dead things in jars. These activities, though innocuous in some hands, turned sinister in his. A field mouse captured in our backyard was less a friend and more an exercise in how long he could extend its suffering, how well he could preserve those little moments of despair, driving a needle in, then capturing the moment frame by frame photographs. To pinpoint the exact moment, the most minuscule of details, measured them in the span of flesh stretched to its limits, twisted in abject horror. It was a different kind of science, one that I likened to a kind of dark magic, powerful and detrimental to its user and the people around him. Wrapped up like something beautiful and awful, sequined and glittering, but dripping in oil, slick, rainbow sheets of sludge. Hugo yanked me forward, grip turning tighter. I tripped and he laughed, still dragging me along over root and rock until we hit a clearing with one solitary tree sitting in its center. Its trunk was devoid of a small swath of bark, smooth even at a distance. As we got closer, I saw a ring of mushrooms at its base that traveled up its trunk in a spiral pattern, up and up. It disappeared into its canopy. "Oyster mushrooms," he said, releasing my hand to pluck one from the bark. He left marks. My reddened wrist contrasted against the pale white of freshly pulled bark. It reminded me of his angry red gums gnashing at me, smiles and frowns. Hugo was smiling at me then, pulling swiftly and roughly, tearing off just as much bark as he was mushrooms, raining clumps of brown to join the clutter on the forest floor. Bark and mush fell haphazard atop a corpse, a fox, carpeted in what looked like to be more mushrooms. They bisected its torso. The mound of mushrooms, which looked like nothing I'd ever seen in Hugo's many, many books, stemmed like a dress from its waist, draping the rest of its body in its fungal carpet. Only its feet were left uncovered. But they were not bare. Frost had started its seasonal creep, transforming the fox's paws into glass slippers. Winter's supine approach had begun, starting with her. I hadn't realized it when we first arrived. This was a birthplace, a death anchoring itself to the forest. I continued to stare at the fox, searching. Her lightless eyes glittered at me in the dying light. Resurrected under my attention, life found and unraveled, unspun at my feet, thread loose fibers imbued with story. I imagined that she smiled a smile at me full of sharp, friendly teeth. For the briefest of moments, I felt the whisper of her touch, her paw caressing my cheek, telling me how this fate had befell her, a story not too dissimilar from mine. I had to protect her. I knew what Hugo would do to her if he found her, exactly the way he'd extricate her and preserve her, perpetually dead in his basement with a sprinkling of mushrooms and fall leaves for company. The other dead animals didn't count. They had no more half-lives, no in-between. That was my domain. With liminal fingers half crusted with frost, straining from the breakdown of cartilage that life would wrap around the soft bend of my joints, her joints, she sat taut and stiff, halfway between specimen and taxidermy. A product of clumsy hands and even clumsier mouths, cruelly propped up against the door to let the draft in. We weren't meant to be gutted and set for display. Hugo's delighted face was sharp. Shadows fell across him like they belonged there, deepening the crags and dips of his smile. The fox's unseeing eyes still bore into mine, and as Hugo stepped back from his rough foraging to look at me, I blocked the fox from view with my body, leaning languid against a tree. His eyes raked over me, hungry open maws of sight. He made to move toward me, his basket overflowing with an abundance of mushrooms dangling from his elbow. I did not flinch. I had been chewed up and spat out before. But a single oyster tumbled out of the basket, falling at his feet. His eyes darted down. Curses tumbled from his lips just as the mushroom just had. He crouched and picked up the singular mushroom, angrily brushing the excess dirt off it. He looked so vulnerable there on his knees, cooing over the fallen thing as though he hadn't just violently torn it from its homes moments before. A rock sat right by the fox's head, large enough to serve as its stony pillow, jagged enough that it could promise a painful and messy death. Her dead eyes smiled at me, her form less vulpine and more human the longer I stared at the rock and breathed life into her story. If the fox had hands and strength enough to lift it, would it have lived? Would her paws not be dipped in ice? Would she be here now, acting as my hands? My hands had already found their way to the rock, having leaned down as I pondered those questions. I inched closer to Hugo, staring at the top of his head. I examined his receding hairline and the numerous nascent liver spots and silver hairs. It looked like pencil lines interrupted by a filthy and worn-down eraser. His eyes met mine then. I don't know how he didn't notice until I was already towering over him, rock gripped in both my hands, raised over my head. His eyes bore into me, terribly blue eyes, as death clung to me, whispering to me, I'd never get them out of my hair, the leaves, the mushrooms, not until. He sat at my shoulder right there inside the memory of our house, sitting quietly without him, a vision tailored made for me. Her tails unfurled, her teeth sharpened. Her gown of mushrooms was apparent and as white as the snow, taking on the quality of shaggy fur. Delicate, like the tendrils of a Medusa. She was a woman sitting on our porch. She was a fox sitting on my porch. Her ears tipped with frost and twitching as leaves fell from our maple tree, never falling outside of the circle that we laid out for him. What would I do without him, she asked. Maybe spend that fall studying the weight of leaves and measure them in the fade of my green to withered brown. Gather them in piles, feel how they crumple to pieces in my hand, the crunch of their skeletons soft and grainy in their collapse. Decomposition will sit with you, set in the circumstance of life, circles of death and rot. The house will sit empty, but they will sit quietly, no hands to interrupt. My hands shook, imagining the collapse. She shook, shedding the gown of mushrooms, taking on the look of death in its entirety, encouraging me to lift. And so I did. As I raised the stone higher, I watched his eyes drown with a surety, a certainty, realization, recognition. She comes for us all at some point, clever little foxes that don't stay dead. But for now, she wasn't here for me. All she did was help guide my hand. The oyster mushroom he had cleaned of dirt sat snug in his hand. I could see it waiting, the knowing of what was to come, and knowing that it would not change anything for it and its brethren. But Hugo and his eyes, those terribly blue eyes, did not care. He smashed it in his fist, letting its flesh ooze out between its fingers, and for a second time that day he showed me with a sweet-toothed smile, wide and menacing. I swung down. That story, again, was called Decomposition Sets With You All by Fabi M. How was that? Death does indeed come for us all. And much like the ones in cemeteries, decomposition will sit with you if you sit in the cemetery long enough. Just below the soil. Oh yes, it was indeed a thing. How about another story? This one, Adelaide Cemetery, by Lucy Joyce. This story contains sensitive content. Death was accompanied by the patter of nurses' rubber-soled shoes marching briskly along linoleum floors, the smell of antiseptic solution, a gurney wheel in need of oil squeaking rhythmically as another patient was rushed past, starchy white sheets, and the sharp and angular shapes of nurses' headdresses. My body revolted against the crisp order and violent expulsions of browns, greens, and yellows against the bleached hospital whites. Veins stood out on my small, pale neck, and spittle flew from my mouth as I screamed. The cool bed sheets, tucked with neat and stern hospital corners, were twisted into angry, damp knots against my writhing body. I am ordinarily a neat and demure person, so you can imagine my cringing in horror at this loud, violent, and messy departure. I shudder when my mind invariably drifts to remember it. I am happily brought back to the present by the distant iron clang of a cemetery gate. There's a reassuring and settled sameness about death, a contentment, cool, mossy, and stone-strewn, calm, and painless. Life was harder, stressful. My father worked long days in crumbling mine tunnels cut deep into the earth. He would return with his face etched deeply with coal dust. Collapsing into wheezy snores on the small, hard bed, I remember too my mother's mouth tight-lipped with constant worry and concealing two sharp-tipped front teeth. I remember my baby brother screaming with hunger and cold. The frigid earth was chipped open by large-shouldered men with axes and spades when that brother died before the spring melt. Of course, there were some joyous moments, things I recollect with nostalgia. There is one thing I remember with a thrill of excitement. Alice Alderidge and I on that summer morning. The air was already thick, humid, and buzzing with crickets as we ran to the creek. It was our favorite place in summer, this particular spot where water gathered, cool and shaded, the gurgling pool of deep stone. That day, for the first time, we swam without clothes. Our girlish squeals were loud. We were exhilarated with naughtiness of it, with the thrilling and mortifying possibility of someone might appear suddenly and see us. When we got out to dress on the warm rocks, I turned to watch as she emerged serpentine and lithe from the water. Beautiful was the thought that arrived, unbidden but suddenly completely obvious into my mind. We were no longer squealing or giggling. Droplets slid over her small form, I better stop right here on some of this. Hang on, let me get to a little bit less graphic. Let's see. Oh my, let's get past that little bit. Let me paraphrase. They had a rather steamy time. I waited aching, but Alice didn't arrive at Highgate Cemetery for another 60 years. As with all of the others, a pile of earth was disgorged for her. In dark and damp claws, worms struggling wetly in the too bright air, her body was wrinkled and thin, but those sultry green eyes had never dimmed. She had married a man previously, liar, I thought, and had 5 children. It's not that I'm considerate for the readers. This is more for me. I don't want to be kicked off of Twitch. I spent those first decades in hope, but she did not remain after death in a ghostly form as I had. I remained alone. Sometime I traced the name I had in life. Adelaide Quayle, 1898 to 1913. With a finger as translucent and light as a whisper, this simple summary of myself is etched in modest stone now coated with moss. These days, my existence is mainly devoted to observing the predictable contours of the seasons. I sit for weeks on the shoulder of the stone angel to watch the snow gradually recede from sun-filled valleys. I observe the daisies irrepressible, forcing their way through the frigid ground to greet the spring sun. I lie across the cracked stone of my own grave and watch as raindrops hurtle towards the ground from tempestuous autumnal skies. Ooh, that's a hard word to say. From tempestuous autumnal skies. I am contained here by unknowable forces to the cemetery and the surrounding forest. I have little influence on the world around me, except maybe a slight parting of the wind as it moves around me. I am impervious to dirt and mud, invisible even after bathing in the stagnant September moose swamps or lying across summer-baked dirt roads. On swirling, freezing winter mornings, my bare feet leave barely perceptible prints as I wander across the lightest drifts. I am unnoticed by all but the lightest and most alert insects and birds which I can occasionally convince to briefly perch on my insubstantial form. I spend some of my time in the warmer months accompanying tour groups of motley children on school excursions. Modern people tend to burn their bodies, a morbid practice in my opinion, but it has had the positive effect of converting Highgate Hill Cemetery into more of a commemorative museum than an active cemetery. This is a relief to me. Although I am without a body, I am not without feelings, and I used to find the wailing of grieving widows and the cries of children at the graves recently dead loved ones very distressing. I would stand with them as they cried, wearing an invisible expression of sober and respectful grief. Now, instead, I join the children as they crowd around information boards about local history or in front of the graves of mausoleums. On one information board entitled Coal Creek Settlement 1890 to 1957, there's a photo of some children from my schoolhouse taken 2 years before I started there myself. They see us, but they don't really see us, these children of the present day. I've watched mere inches from their face as they observe my contemporaries. I can sense that understanding is lost somewhere in the colorless of the black and white image or in our straight faces. Smiling wasn't in vogue in photographs at the time. Or just by virtue of the clothing, which seems strange and old-fashioned to them. We're not so different, you know, I explain, although they don't hear me. The tour guide does nothing to help. My grave, for example, is used to describe the cholera epidemic which gripped the valley in early 20th century. It was allegedly caused by the town's water supply running through the corpses of... Hold on, there's something wrong with my monitor. Oh, there we go. It was allegedly caused by the town's water supply running through the corpses of men crushed in a mining disaster, not a fact that I reveled in finding out about. Well, there's more to know about me than that, I say irritably. But this woman was born in 1981, so I can't blame her for knowing very little about history. There's a fir tree near my grave which outdates this alleged expert of the past by 2 decades. She tells the children about my tragic death. At only 15 years of age, this death of mine, she points out, was 1 year before the outbreak of the Great War. This provides a convenient seed to shepherd the trotting children to the next stand of graves. Some days I find it insulting that my death is used as merely a pivoting point towards more important and famous deaths, but perhaps I'm being overly sensitive. The children by this point are usually glazed. This is unsurprising. How can children root themselves into shifting sands of the past with facts and figures? 60 men dead in a mine collapse in 1913 at Coal Creek, 20 million dead in the First World War. Better to tell them that Bart Lawrence, visible in the front row of the schoolhouse photo, has a visibly wet nose because he cried on the first day of school. Or that the frizzy-haired Maggie Aldridge, sister of the aforementioned Alice, was in love with Thomas Woodburn. Or that we would all have snowball fights outside the schoolhouse when school finished on the last day before our Christmas break. If only I could tell them. I think with a wicked glee about Alice. Her body glistening, smiling at me with sultry confidence. Then they would understand, I think, that the young people in the faded photograph were not so different from themselves. On a cool autumn morning, one girl from among another group of shuffling and sniffing school children looked at my grave and said to no one in particular, "Adelaide Quayle. Adelaide like the sitter in Australia, and Quayle like the bird." Her alert green eyes regarded my name with interest. I felt seen, recognized, celebrated. "Yes," I cried, unheard. "Exactly, that's me." I followed the green-eyed girl, endeavoring to be helpful by giving unheard but correct answers to the questions on the worksheet secured in her clipboard. I reluctantly farewelled her when her group left through the wrought iron gates 45 minutes later. I obsessed over the minutiae of this meeting for the glorious and delightful hours afterwards. Imagine my shock and joy when the girl, my new Alice, walked through again only a week later, wrangling an exuberant golden puppy on a leash. I walked with them from one gate to the next, telling her about the changing of the seasons, about the hospital with its clean white surfaces, about my family, and about the schoolhouse. I told her that we could run together through the long grass once the weather warmed again. We could run to the creek. I could show her the spot, the cool, sheltered spot where the water is deep. The air would be hot, and we could drape our dresses on the warm rocks while we swam together. The first sprinkling of snow dusted the tops of the immense distant ranges, an event I usually watched for, but I was too distracted to notice. Being unseen and unheard had previously only been a mild annoyance, but now it was torture. Alice arrived most days in the evenings, dog on leash, traveling from gate to gate, presumably as part of a larger loop. I screamed in agonized frustration each day she left me, yearning to be seen, to be known, to touch and be touched. Inspiration came one morning when I observed a dew-covered spiderweb branching and complex, ordinarily invisible, but illuminated by its wetness in the bright morning sun. Nearby, a hummingbird was extracting nectar from a group of flowers. I hardened my heart and reached for the small bird, unsure what force my invisible fingers could produce. I was as shocked as the hummingbird when I was able to grasp its tiny, almost weightless body. I twisted its neck decisively, raised it to my lips. My invisible and blunt but persistent teeth tore at the sinewy body. Feathers twisted and fluttered to the damp earth as warm, small organs burst against my lips. Blood and entrails ran down my chin, coating my mouth and face. The wait for her was torturous. I distractedly observed yellowed leaves fluttering to the ground from the oak trees on the hill. Finally, the light started to ebb from the afternoon, turning the sky into a dusty gray. I heard her approaching and stood at the gate's entrance, wheeling my nervous mouth and contours of which I hoped were now at last visible into a smile of greeting. At first, I thought my plan had failed. They were only a few steps away and continuing unconcernedly. Suddenly, though, the dog stopped, eyes fixed on my face, and uttered a low growl. The girl, confused and worried, stopped as well. She looked at the dog and followed its gaze to the space where I stood in front of them. My smile widened. I was exhilarated by my scheme, ready for the first time in over a century to be seen. My Alice stumbled backwards, her eyes wide and a scream beginning in her throat. It was a perfect moment before she ran, where we looked right into each other's eyes. What a wonderful story by Miss Lucy Joyce. That story once again was Adelaide Cemetery. What a wonderful read indeed. Can you imagine being dead for centuries and not being able to communicate? Being trapped in this plane of existence, never to be felt, seen, or heard. That is not something that I myself would wish upon anyone. After all, the sadness that went with that poor ghoul in that cemetery was almost palpable to me. Oh yes, it was a very interesting read indeed. Oh, I think I'm going to have one more little intermission, and then I'll come back and possibly read one, maybe two more stories before calling our night an end. I believe it's been successful, don't you agree? See you soon. Hello once again, my Fiendish fans. Again, I apologize. I got really hungry all of a sudden, so we just kind of chill and relax and let those creepy stories sink into your bones and marrow. There's all that talk of camping food. Yes, exactly! All that talk of the good food. That would make anyone hungry. Unfortunately, all I've got right now is chow mein. So, to my viewers, I'm going to go out of character for a few minutes while we're doing this. Again, I would like to thank everybody for being here. This is a new series that I've started. I was nervous about it at first because it's very rare that I read stories and do things like that. And those urban legend stories, the way I set it up, is just kind of what I remember from my mind and things that have been told to me or that I've heard throughout the years. Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Ruby. Oh yeah, there's going to be more of it. This is one of those series that I myself want to continue because I'm big horror buff. I love horror and most anything to do with it. And next time, I'll try to scan some of the stories ahead of time to make sure we don't come across things that was like in the previous. We don't need any of that, let's say, lemon snuff in these streams, shall we say. From what I read, it wasn't that bad, but still, you don't want to say it on stream. Did you send it Discord? Let me look. Yes, the terms of service, of course. Holding all of us creeps back from our really good stories. Don't you just hate it? I will be checking in just a second, as soon as it loads up on my phone. Because trying to pull it up on my my computer will ruin the avatar in the bottom right. Oh yes. Then again, most of society has become snowflakes, of course. And not the good, pretty kinds either. Okay, so I'm looking. Ah, there it is. Ooh, thank you. So your story is Newell by Jan Mark. I will definitely look for it. I think the next story that I read for you will be the last because it is quite long. And you mentioned creepypastas earlier. Why am I getting into character? So you mentioned creepypastas earlier. I have always wanted to read this one story on a stream or make a video of me reading it. It's my personal favorite, and you'll find out when I go back into character, but I have it pulled up now. It is very much longer than the short stories I've been telling right now, but it's good. In the meantime, I will, once off stream, look for that story and add it to my spook library. Yes, I'm going to start making a list of all the nice stories to read to you on all these Fear Day Fridays. So expect so much more creepy content coming your way. Let's see. Who else is Who else? I've been sent a message from another person who's been watching my stream. A message from them. Let me see. Ooh. I guess I can find one for you off stream. Let's see. This message is from Jay. Excellent stream, Carrie. Let's see. Let me make sure I can read this. He just is enjoying the stream. The rest of this is meant for my eyes. I see. Well, Jay, if you were in this chat still by chance, I hope things get better for you, and take care of yourself, yeah? Oh, for those who've missed the stream, don't worry, I have it recorded. I'm going to upload it to my YouTube channel tonight. And also for a little while, it's going to be on Twitch under the videos. I don't have affiliate or anything like that where my videos will stay more than 24 hours, but, well, more than a week, I should say. I don't know. How long do they stay? Either way, it'll be on Twitch for you guys to catch, shortly. And if you miss it on Twitch, like if they take it off, it'll be on my YouTube channel. I see. Thank you. And right now, it's a good time to play any and all sound effects you want to play. I do appreciate the consideration when I'm reading these of not playing those sound effects. But you can. I'm not saying you can't. It would be funny and whatnot. That's why they're there. They're to have fun, interact with me and everybody else with. That's why, again, I don't charge people bits for playing the sound effects, because I just find it, it doesn't set right with me. And to those also that are watching, I understand it's Friday night. A lot of people would do their own thing. They'll go out and whatnot and do things with friends and whatnot. But for those of you who are here, thank you so much for being here. I love the gremlin laughs. It's so fun. That's a good one to play at certain points in stories. And there's plenty down there where you can try to jump scare me, because if you haven't noticed, when I'm in character and reading, I really get into the story and the atmosphere. So it's easy maybe to catch me off guard. Who knows? Hint, hint. This is just, this is just as much for fun as it is for the spooks. It's back. We're back. Yep. So what I was saying off stream, when it kind of got interrupted for a minute, I don't think it was the Gremlin laugh. I think it was just my computer itself kind of had a flub. It would be really easy for some of those sound alerts to possibly jump scare me when I'm reading, because I get into the character and the story and atmosphere so much, especially this next one. Again, I love creepypastas. I've been reading creepypastas since I was in roughly 8th grade. That was a long time ago. Don't ask. Yeah, so creepypastas has been around for a while. But before that, I remember my original creepypastas were not creepypastas. It was like Goosebumps or Stephen King short stories. That's how far back I go. See, when I first found my love of horror, creepypasta was not even a flicker in somebody's eye. I got my first, you know what I'm talking about. Goosebumps is always fun and nice. I broke my teeth. Broke my teeth? How do I want to phrase this? I got my start in horror by reading Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'll never forget it. Creepypastas were the online version of Goosebumps, but crap, yeah, I go that far back. Well, oh yeah, I'll never forget. It was about 4th grade when I decided to sit down and grab a particular book from the school library, and it was way above my my reading level according to teachers and the in-school librarian. I picked up Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yes, the original book, Bram Stoker's Dracula, not the watered down one with modernized text. The original Bram Stoker's Dracula with all the big Victorian words. And I'll never forget, the librarian looked at me and said, "Are you sure you can read this?" And this was before they got really strict about making the students read within their grade level. So I said, yeah, I want to read this because I've seen the movie and I've heard that the book was better. And that wasn't a lie, because I had seen Bram Stoker's Dracula previously. And it wasn't the original black and white one, but I did see that one way later. Anyway, getting off topic. I got that book and I started reading it. And to my mother's surprise and my 5th or 4th grade teacher's surprise, whichever one, I was able to read and comprehend the words that was being said in that book. Absolutely one of the best original horror stories ever written. I absolutely loved it. After that, I started reading more Edgar Allan Poe. And during that time also, Goosebumps started coming up. But the more I read Goosebumps, It was more like, as I was reading those, it didn't really scratch that bone-chilling horror itch. But it was still a fun read. I still read them. I loved them. And that's all that matters in the long run. Shortly after that, I was actually a freshman in high school, and I read my very first Stephen King book, Dolores Claiborne. I didn't really like Dolores Claiborne, but I gave Stephen King another chance or two. The first one I gave a chance to that I really enjoyed was Pet Sematary. Loved that book. I wanted to read more. And about that time, I had seen the original TV special of Stephen King's It, and I wanted to read the book. And it took a while, but I finally found it. Thickest book I had ever read in that time. Oh my God, was that book huge! Anyway, I think Twitch is kind of flubbing up. I don't see my viewers here. Hello, chat, viewers, are you there? Oh, okay, good. Yeah, Twitch kind of flubbed up, so I had to refresh to make sure. Hello to all three viewers that are here. Thank you for being here. I have finished. Yeah, Twitch is sleepy. Well, Twitch, I hope you have wonderful nightmares after everything that I've read. So, here's what I'm going to do. This stream has actually been going for like 2 hours now, and I made a promise to somebody that I'd spend a little time with them. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off on my creepypasta story until next Friday or whenever I can do another stream like this. Before I go, I want you guys to take a few moments and post in chat, not in DMs, what you thought of this stream and what stories or things you would like me to do in the future for this series. I legit want some feedback on this, because if this isn't really a big hit, I will figure something else out. Oh yeah, it makes it way more surprising. Plus, you know how all those shows in the past would be like, tune in next time to see the stories unfold. That's kind of what I'm doing here. Ah, well, thank you so much. I have your story. I'm going to have to research and see if I can find it. As a matter of fact, let's see. Hanging out listening to one of my favorite people doing fun stuff. Aw, you're so sweet. Thank you so much. That means a lot. I appreciate that, Ruby. And to anyone else in chat, thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, there's not much else to say. I just really, really appreciate it. I was worried about this. I was worried about this next chapter and how I'm going to present my streams, and I'm pretty fairly certain that I'm going to go the VTuber route with it. I just feel like I'll be more comfortable that way, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch the video that I did of today, and if I could tell that I was way more comfortable with this format and whatnot, because you could tell when somebody's comfortable. That'll just kind of sort of be my affirmation, if you will, that I'm on the right niche. Thoughts on the concept? Is it good? Is it bad? Sound like you was having fun. Like you to continue that. If not, we'll work on it. Absolutely. So, Ruby, your story looks like it's part of a bigger collection in a actual book called "Nothing to Be Afraid of" by Jan Mark. It's a it looks like it's a collection of short stories. Um, no, it's all part of that book. I'm gonna have to see if I can find it. Um, reasonable, hopefully. The stories that I read are free online stories. Um, Soon from the videos, it can be told on its own. Yeah, some can if you could find it. Oh, excuse me, I burped. I did say excuse me, didn't I? By the way, I didn't ask, and I really should have. Um, the music, did it help or hurt the story reading? Was it too loud or anything like that? Barely noticed when reading? Okay. Well, that's good. I guess when I go back and read this, I can judge for myself on the levels if I needed the music to come up or keep it where it's at. I personally wanted to keep it kind of low, but at the same time, audible. I know. That's why I mentioned that I might just make my own judgments. So, growing up, what was your favorite horror story? Let's get a little more specific. What was your favorite Goosebumps story? I uh I personally, my favorite and the one that pops up the most for me in my memory, because it was so different and it actually was one of the few that scared me, is a little less known one called The Beast from the East. Following The Beast from the East is Night of the Living Dummies series and the Monster Blood series. And in fourth place would be It Came from Beneath the Sink. I loved those books in the Goosebumps series. The Blob one, that's Monster Blood, is it not? Oh, another good one. The Haunted Mask series was really good for Goosebumps. One more question, and then I'll end the stream. Is we talked about Goosebumps. Now, if you could pick the one story that scared you the most and has stuck with you throughout your life, which one would that be? For me, it's going to be it's going to be Pet Cemetery, and it scared me in a good way, and it's gonna stick with me till I'm rotting in the grave, so to speak. Haunted Mask was the first episode. Watched. It was on tape. And oh yeah, but the book is so much better than the show version. One of the Creep Show ones, Hitchhiker Got You. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, well, boils and ghouls, it's time for me to say goodnight. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite, or do if you like that sort of thing. And hey, remember, this is just the beginning of our Fear Day Fridays. Tune in next week, where I'll have more stories to give you those wonderful little goosebumps all up and down your skin and send a shiver up and down your spine. Good night.